Tigran Petrosian, Russian. June 17, 1929, August 13, 1984, was a Soviet-Armenian chess grandmaster and the 9th world chess champion from 1963 to 1969. He was nicknamed Iron Tigran due to his almost impenetrable defensive playing style, which emphasized safety above all else. Petrosian was a candidate for the World Chess Championship on 8 occasions: 1953, 1956, 1959, 1962, 1971, 1974, 1977, and 1980. He won the World Championship in 1963 against Mikhail Botvinnik, successfully defended it in 1966 against Boris Spassky, and lost it to Spassky in 1969. Grandmaster Viktor Korchnoi, 1931 to 2016, was a Soviet and later Swiss grandmaster who achieved nearly every possible chess success in a roughly 70-year career, approximately from 1945 to 2015, other than a world championship. He played in 10 candidates tournaments over nearly 30 years from 1962-91, winning 2 of them, but never becoming champion. Korchnoi was also a 4-time Soviet chess champion and 5-time Swiss champion, winning his last of the latter in 2011 at the age of 80. Tigran Petrosian playing as white versus Viktor Korchnoi playing as black. Quarter-final candidates, 1977 Italy. Important ending which is critical for many players to look at, as it contains some valuable chess play. It was played between Tigran Petrosian and Viktor Korchnoi in the 1977 candidates match, and was a very anticipated match with the aggressive style of Korchnoi against Petrosian's defensive or positional play. However, in this game, the risky opening chosen by Korchnoi allowed Petrosian to gain control of the board and showed that given the chance, he too can play a very aggressive game. The opening in this game is the Semi-Tarrasch defense, which is a risky yet a reasonable defense if employed effectively. In general, the Semi-Tarrasch defense is similar to the Tarrasch defense, except that instead of accepting an isolated d-pawn, black accepts space deficiency. A Petrosian patent. Most if not all of Petrosian's chess games as white are opened with either d4 or c4. However, just for the beginners out there, it is important to note that neither e4, d4 or c4, and knight f3 and g3 are all equal openings, with neither one being more effective than the other. It is only a matter of preference. Korchnoi responds with d5, which is slightly odd for his style of play, as most of the time, 86% of the time in fact, Korchnoi replies to 1, d4 with knight f6, and either a Grunfeld or an Indian. Less common than c4, but perfectly playable. Once again mimicking white's move. White now has 2 main choices: c4, which leads to the queen gambit, or bishop g5, which may become a tour attack depending on other moves played. Accepting the gambit pawn is playable, but white can easily win back the pawn. We have now reached the main line of the queen's gambit declined. Here we are at the Tarrasch defense. Usually in the queen gambit declined, black's main goals are e5 or c5. Here with the Tarrasch defense, black achieves this goal early. However, it can lead to a slight strategic advantage to white. By far the best and most common move. With the Tarrasch defense, black accepts an isolated d-pawn for smooth development and plenty of space. After a slightly uncommon move order, we reach the Semi-Tarrasch defense. As said before, white obtains an advantage after the following moves. Logical and in my opinion, the best move. Black is voluntarily allowing his knight to be driven around the board. There is no reason why white should not do just that. The only correct move is it gains tempi and trades off pieces to lessen a future attack. However, the disadvantages are obvious as white's b-pawn has now been converted to a c-pawn, increasing white's central majority. A critical point in the opening. Black has allowed white to obtain a large central space advantage, and with 3 minor pieces on the board, he should be looking to trade off pieces to lessen a future attack of white's. This is exactly what this move and bishab for accomplish. As mentioned, this is played to trade off the minor pieces. However, after the trade, black will be left with a very passive white bishop compared to white's active bishop. Although black has succeeded in exchanging 2 sets of minor pieces, white doesn't really mind, as his 2 minor pieces are very well placed. Now that the position has simplified, we can analyze the position. There are only 2 sets of minor pieces on the board, but white's bishop can come into play actively, unlike black's white bishop, while white's knight is also actively placed. White also has a large central majority, and although the king looks awkward in the center, it is perfectly safe. Because of his small central majority, black's chances are on the queen side with his 2-1 pawn majority on the left wing. However, it will only be towards the endgame when black can exploit this, and he must be content with developing and defending himself for now. White, on the other hand, is looking for the d5 advance to create a passed pawn, and even if it is not queened, it will draw black's forces away from his king, whereupon white will launch an attack. The best spot for the bishop, as it helps the d5 advance. Furthermore, bishop d3 and bishop e2 block the e and d files which white will want to place his rooks on. At first sight, this is a simply logical move, as it develops the knight to the best square. However, if white can get the d5 advance in, black will be forced to lose time moving his knight a second time. Therefore, there is a lot to be said about knight d7. So, black's move is completely in contrary with what is required, and there is nothing wrong. However, it should be noted that knight d7 should also be considered as a possible move. White needs his rooks on the open files to break through. Also, after the coming d5, e take d, the e file will be open, and white's king could be vulnerable. Black's best move. He prepares the fianchetto, which will activate his trapped bishop. White's rooks mobilize as quickly as possible. Another possible move is rook f to d1. When the rook goes to c1, however, the prospects for the e-file opening are very good. Furthermore, white needs a protector of e4, as after bishop b7, black might have nasty discoveries on the unprotected pawn. Logical follow-up. White has now completed his objective and has mobilized his rooks and is ready to play d5. With this move, black anticipates the coming d5 advance, and although it is too late to stop the pawn, with all white's forces ready, he breaks through. Now he must watch for the d6 blockading maneuver, as mentioned previously. It is necessary to exchange pawns to free the f5 square. White has now obtained what he wants, a passed pawn, but he must now work on trying to queen the pawn. With the idea of knight d6 blockading the pawn, but Petrosian has an excellent move. This is an excellent move because it prepares to bring the knight to c6, where it will either cause much annoyance for black if he leaves it there, or he will have to exchange it for his white bishop, turning the passed d pawn into a passed c pawn, meaning the blockading move in d6 is useless. So black blocks the passed pawn, but with the knight c6 move coming, he brings a little trouble about himself. Now black has two choices. 1. Trade the bishop for the knight. 2. Attempt to ignore the knight by queen f6, after which white will protect the bishop and black will have to endure awful middle game due to the well-placed knight. From all the alternatives mentioned, this is the worst continuation. Although it temporarily wins a piece, black has no way to block the future passed c pawn, and with less pieces on the board, white's passed pawn is increasing in power, and this ultimately leads to black's downfall. So now white's passed pawn has turned from dc, meaning the knight d6 is completely pointless, therefore black exchanges it for white's bishop. Winning back the piece as there is a discovered attack on the queen. So black must now give back the piece. White keeps the queens on the board instead of queen take d6, which allows him to attack on the king's side, while black's pieces are tied down to defending the passed c pawn. This move also gains a tempi, which will help white. With the sensible and logical idea of blockading the pawn. Petrosian realizes that black has no winning prospects and cannot do anything, as his pawn majority on the left wing is of no value in comparison to white's passed pawn. Therefore, he takes his time, firstly by giving his king some loft, so that the rookie one is free to maneuver if necessary. Black wants to give his king some loft to prevent back rank mates, as there could be many threats to the back rank to come. However, perhaps such a weakening of the king's position mightn't be necessary at this point in time, as white has no direct threats against the back rank. With this move and the next, white demonstrates his complete superiority over black, as he can take his time to maneuver, since black cannot do anything productive. With nothing to do, black hopes to at least prevent white from queening the pawn with all his forces. However, this allows white to launch an attack. Petrosian protects his pawn again while centralizing his queen to the best square possible. White is completely dominating, and the only thing which remains to be given a useful job is the rook. Black is simply biding his time. However, I think this is a psychological surrender, as Petrosian with his next move realizes black's surrender and plans an attack. Instead of the rook d7, which can be played anytime, Petrosian plans the attack. Now his rook can come to f4, g4, and h4. Bidding time. With black's forces distracted by the passed pawn, white advances his king, as well as the g-pawn, which will be used to break into black's king. This move becomes more apparent after black's 31st move, as it also prevents any checks on the back rank. Preparing b5 to give some hopeful counterplay, but right now black is quite lost. Black can do nothing against this slow but steady advance of the pawns. White is now preparing the g5 break. Just watch how Petrosian calmly maneuvers his pieces. A very flexible move. The reason behind this move is that when white plays g5, black might block the position with h5 and g6, when the hole on f6 will become a weakness. Rook e2 allows the queen to come to f3, so that if the h5 g6 maneuver is played, the queen can exploit the hole on f6. Furthermore, The rook is better positioned here, as it can come to the c-file or d-file if necessary, whereas on e4, it cannot come to c4. It sometimes seems unnecessary to do this move, and if black had certain threats or counterplay, it probably would be a waste of a move. However, black do anything productive, so white can afford to take his time. Black is still biding his time. Finally, the g5 break. If h take g, black will lose quickly due to the open h-file. Black's best move. He blocks the position around the king, but as mentioned, when the queen comes to f3, he will have a hole on f6. White protects the rook, so enabling his queen to come to f3. He doesn't mind giving up the e-file, as it is of no use to him. Black takes control of the e-file, but this comes too late. Only now can one appreciate the importance of the king g2 move, as if it were on g1, black would have drawing chances with rook e1 and rook c1. White finally achieves his goal. Although there is no weakness on the f6 square yet, black's next move is forced to protect the h-pawn. The only move to protect the h-pawn, but now the f6 square will be a permanent weakness. Black's f-pawn is also a weakness, and since the rook is doing nothing useful on the e-file, he bolsters the pawn. Making full use of the weakness and applying more pressure to the f-pawn. Furthermore, he threatens the decisive rook d7. A final mistake. The point of this move was so that after rook d7, queen e8, the queen protects the f-pawn. However, Korchnoi under time pressure misses the following combination. A very pretty move is f take g, allows queen c3, followed by mate. Blunder due to time pressure, but black was lost anyways. Checkmate. An extremely complex game showing some ideas in the Semi-Tarrasch defense, the importance of recognizing a completely dominating position and taking your time to unleash the killer blow, as well as how to set goals such as the penetration of the weak f6 square and work towards them. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe.